Welcome to Rust Guides. Today we're going to be taking a look at setting up a beginner's hemp farm. You may ask yourself, what's the point of a hemp farm? Well, a hemp farm passively produces high volumes of hemp with very little input from you. This hemp can then be taken to the bandit camp and traded for scrap. So essentially, you can generate scrap while you're off doing other things or simply while you're AFK. There's lots of ways you could go about setting up a hemp farm, but from some basic experimenting, I feel like this is the most straightforward with almost everything you need available from the bandit camp. Before we get going, you'll probably want to know an approximate return on what we're about to set up. So I'll make it clear rather than to waste your time. With this base, I make on average between 3 to 400 scrap every 2 to 3 hours, but you can farm more frequently to give a higher return. I typically get on average around 2,700 cloth per batch, which converts to 330 scrap. Now with that clear, let's build a hemp farm. So for this, we're going to need the following: 4 solar panels, 3 root combiners, 1 water pump. Now this could be swapped for some rain collectors and fluid combiners, but it's far less efficient. 1 medium rechargeable battery. This could be a large battery or a collection of small batteries. 4 sprinklers, 4 ceiling lights. Now you don't necessarily need 4 of each, but this gives us the most optimal results that I've found. 4 large planters, 2 garage doors, these can be double doors, 7 reinforced windows. Now you could opt for walls, but this is preference as I like the maximum light possible, and 4 large boxes. Now that is completely optional. Finally, you're going to need 2 sheet doors to complete your base with an airlock. You may be questioning the necessity for all the electronics, but there is some method to my madness. I found this base has a typical power consumption of around 21 constantly. So as we're using solar panels, we need to have an excess of power to charge the battery through the day so we can stay powered during the night. Typically, Rust has a 1:4 ratio of night to day, which means approximately 75% of the day we can use solar panels. This isn't always the case, and the solar panels don't always run at maximum efficiency. With solar panels, I try to aim for 2 to 3 times the power needed to ensure the battery has sufficient charge at night, as you also have to remember during the day you will still be using the same amount of power. If we take our power consumption as a baseline, we'll need approximately 63 power from our solar panels, which works out to be 4 solar panels due to each solar panel only producing 20 power. In reality, the water pump is a little overkill for this base, but it guarantees us a continuous water supply, which helps when we get water-hungry plant genetics. I'll go a little bit into plant genetics later. If you can't get hold of a water pump, which I do understand is probably going to be the hardest item to obtain for this base, then there are 2 options. Your first option would be essentially to daisy chain a selection of rain collectors together to a single sprinkler. Now this method is really inefficient and I wouldn't advise it at all. I typically try and use this way in conjunction with another just to kind of keep your planters topped up more than anything. The second option, and the more viable option, is essentially just to manually fill each of your planters with a water bucket. So essentially all you need is a water bucket for this, and just go into any pool of water or any body of water, as long as it's clean drinking water, and then hold right click with your water bucket to fill it up, and then go back to your planter and hold right click again to basically dispense that water onto the planter. I usually top my planters up to about 9,000 as in max. Most people advise maybe 6,000 to 8,000, which is your optimal sort of water level. I'm just kind of lazy and I don't like to keep going back to my planters. When building hemp farms, I typically use the calculation of 2 planters per sprinkler and a maximum of 5 sprinklers per water pump to guarantee a continuous water supply. I would also advise against using fluid splitters due to the small loss of water when using them. I hope that all made some degree of sense. If you want to challenge my figures, please do so in the comments box down below, as I would love to hear your approaches. That's enough numbers for now. Let's build this base. Resource wise, this base will cost you 8,040 stone and 1,443 wood, with a daily upkeep including the doors and windows of 1,056 stone and 158 metal fragments. The foundations are quite straightforward. You'll simply need 6 square foundations and 4 triangle foundations to begin with. Next, we will need 8 walls and 7 window frames. Alternatively, if you don't want windows, then you'll need 14 walls, but this will come at an additional cost of 90 wood and 540 stone, and then additionally 25 stone upkeep per day. Followed by 2 doorways, 2 wall frames, 6 square floors, 6 triangle floors, and a half wall to finish the foundations. Now place the TC within the triangle enclosure to protect it. We will need to destroy 1 square foundation and the half wall, but we can't do this until the tool cupboard has been placed. We do this because the water pump needs to sit in the water on ground level. With this approach, we can enclose the water pump within our base rather than having it externally for someone to destroy. Once all the foundations are down, upgrade everything to stone. With the base upgraded, let's add the windows and doors. Also, a side note, don't forget your locks. When you add a window to the tool cupboard, it's probably worth adding some upkeep and also keeping a hammer handy if you need to remove the window, which could be easily picked up. Now let's set up the base. We'll start with a water pump, which I've already explained needs to sit in water. It's probably worth pointing out something I should have already pointed out, and that is to test the depth of the water with the pump before you build the base. The water needs to be deep enough, but not too deep for the pump to be placed, so find a good spot and use that as a pinpoint for the base's foundation. Next is to place the battery, which will sit at the rear of the pump. Then place the 3 root combiners above it. You may be tempted to place the large wooden boxes, but you still need access to the root combiners, so leave them till last. Either create a small structure for you to be able to get onto the roof of your base, or slap a ladder on the side for easy access. Now get on top of your base and place the 4 solar panels. It's important when placing solar panels that you're facing the sun. Now obviously in Rust the sun will move, so you kind of want to place them ideally during midday. This way that you will always ensure that you get the maximum amount of sun to your solar panels. Once they're placed, wire all 4 of them up to just 2 of the 3 root combiners. Now destroy the structure or remove the ladder and then hook up the 2 root combiners to the 3rd root combiner and then hook that directly to the medium battery. So now we can place our ceiling lights. We ideally want the ceiling lights directly above each of the planters. To achieve this, the best way is to count the panels. On a stone ceiling, there's 8 panels, so between the 4th and the 5th panel is directly centred horizontally. And there's always a line on the 5th panel indicating the centre vertically, so place the light just after the 4th panel on that line. Repeat this process for all 4 lights. So now we want to place our sprinklers, and we're simply just going to place 1 sprinkler between each of the lights. If you're building your farm in the snow biome, you may need to incorporate 2 heaters. This is to ensure your hemp is growing in an acceptable climate. We can place the heaters on either side of the room, which should be sufficient for a farm of this size. Now we just need to wire and plumb in the lights, sprinklers, water pump, and if used, heaters. Simply run a connection from the battery to a light and then connect each light together in a chain using the pass-through. The same applies to the heaters, and then finally the electrical connection should end at the water pump. Then we need to plumb the water pump to the sprinklers and have the sprinklers chained together with the pass-through just like the lights. Now we just need to place our planters and our boxes to complete our farm. We'll place each of the planters on top of a square foundation to maximise space. We need to tuck 2 boxes above one another in the triangle just to the side of the water pump on each of the shelves. Then once you finish setting up the rest of the base, you can add an additional 2 boxes on the upper shelf as long as you keep them in line with the first box. It's important to offset them back a bit so you can still get to the water pump and battery if needed. Your hemp farm is now ready to go. Now from here you could just simply plant a load of hemp and leave it, but you won't get anywhere near the hemp levels I described at the beginning of this video. What you need for those figures is hemp with good genetics. Genetics play a key role in the production and quality of your hemp. I typically aim for the genetics 4 Ys and 2 Gs, but I believe the optimal genetics is 4 Gs and 2 Ys. Essentially, plants can have 5 different genetics, which are G, Y, H, W and X. 2 are good genetics, 1 is bad, and the other 2 are pretty much useless. G is for growth rate, so the more Gs you have, the faster your production rate will be. Y is for yield, which increases the amount of farm you will get. H is for hardiness, which should increase the health from food but is useless for hemp. W is for water intake. This is the bad one, as it will increase the amount of water required for this to grow. And X is for essentially empty and does nothing. Now there's almost a science behind plant genetics in Rust, and I won't go into it any further in this video, but I am currently working on a comprehensive video for plant genetics, so stay tuned. That pretty much wraps up this video. Everything you've taken from today can also be applied to bigger farms, so I advise to have a little bit of a play around. Now, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, it would be great if you smashed that thumbs up button. As I've already mentioned, I'm working on videos for plant genetics, as well as electronics, and I've almost finished my server guide, so if you're interested in any of those, plus part 2 of my survival guide, don't forget to subscribe.